Okay. Well, welcome to our viewers. This is Fellowship of the Golden Age, and this is the pilot episode. and here we have the lovely Julita Michaels here. So, hi, Julita.
Hello. Hi, Neptune.
Hi. Oh yeah, I'm Neptune Rainbow Dreamer for real. So what we're doing is the theme of these videos is to interview other students of the Ascended Masters teachings. And so there's just going to be a series of various interviews with all sorts of different students. And so anyone who's not familiar with this, we're students of Ascended Masters, and I'd say the commonality that brings us together is that we're all studying teachings that come through Kim Michaels, who happens to be Julita's husband. So anyway, I just think we should just get straight into it. What do you say?
Yep.
We'll get going.
Allow me to say that I really think it's a brilliant idea. I really like it, and I just want to say thank you, big thank you for inviting me. So.
Yeah, thank you for being here. It's very exciting. Okay, so Julita, could you just give us a bit of a description of your background, like your cultural and identity influences? Just give us a bit of outline about your history, would you?
Oh, okay. So I was born in Poland in 70s, which matters because that time it was still communist country under the very strong influence of Catholic Church. So actually, I think that I was very much affected by these two things, with communism and Catholic Church, and it also affects the whole nation very much. And I remember as a child, I actually realized that there was some cognitive dissonance there. I think I was like 5 or 6 when I realized that there is a certain official propaganda coming from communism, and it was about there's no God. And then on a more private setting, because you heard it from the church, not from official propaganda, there is a God. And the church is, of course, representative of that God and Christ on earth. So I think that these two things had a very, very strong influence on me. And I remember this cognitive dissonance I had. I couldn't really deal with that. Why the message is so different. But then, actually, I of course, much later, I realized that these two things, communism and actually Catholic Church, they, on a superficial level, they were talking, yeah, there is God, there is no God. There was a battle here about humans' Polish minds. But in reality, they were actually sending the same message. And the message was that you as an individual, you don't matter. You don't matter. And you need earthly institution to actually function. Because you as an individual, you cannot know what is real, what is true, and you need this earthly institution to tell you. And it is, in a communist case, it is a state with communist party, which will tell you what you should think, what you should do, how you should be as a good citizen. And the same with Catholic Church. Mm-hmm. Catholic Church will tell you that you are a sinner and you need Catholic Church, earthly institution, which will tell you how to live to be saved. So I was affected by that, actually, by this image that you need some outer. Of course, I was struggling with that. I knew from within, but it's not true. But still, it was like affecting me. And of course, communism affected Polish people also in other ways, and it was creating a big distrust in society. So it was distrust to the state institutions or state itself, and also distrust to among the people. Generally in Poland, people have a sense that loyalty is for family and for the church that time, because that time church actually helped people to deal with this very brutal reality. So it's one way. Another is that which affected me very much. It was that communism was it was a very brutal system. So people couldn't really express themselves. They were free to express themselves. So there was this fear of self-expression and the fear of fear of creativity, actually.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
So it was communism, and I'm thinking now about Catholic Church again. And there was one element. It was this, that you need church to actually know what is true, what is real. They were offering you outer path, so it is very, very strongly, very, very strong programming. But there is a path, but it's outer path. And then you need this, like, for example, not even Jesus, because Catholic Church, is about Jesus, but it's more about the church itself. You need church to be saved, not just Jesus.
Yep.
And also what I was affected by, it was this very, very strong image of Jesus they were projecting. And I knew that it wasn't really right, but I was little struggling with that still. And there was also another way in which Catholic Church affected me very much. And it was
one thing. Mm-hmm. Yeah. What's the image of Jesus that they were presenting that disturbed you?
It was obviously idolatry of Jesus. That Jesus is the God, the only Son of God, and it's God in a sense that he's not an example. He is very up on a pedestal. Yep. You can worship him. We can pray to him. You can ask him for help, but you cannot follow him. Really, you cannot become like him. Mm-hmm. And it's Christhood is not a universal concept. Christhood it's only about Jesus. It's Jesus Christ. So it means the only Christ is just Jesus. It's almost like, I remember as a child in my mind, it was like Jesus Christ. It is, and Christ, it's like a, name and last name, Jesus Christ. It wasn't some kind of, role or whatever something more universal that Christ is. So it affected me, and it took me actually a while to overcome it. And there's also another aspect I would like to mention. It's actually the, of course, obvious thing. It's attitude of church to women. And of course, as a woman, you cannot have any position in a church. You cannot make any decisions. You cannot influence church and the dogmas, doctrines in any way. So, of course, on a basic level, you have something to say in a sense that in your parish, you can be active. But in reality, there is a very strong message projected at you. As a woman, you should be silent, because your opinion or your perspective, actually, it's about your perspective. It doesn't matter, because you cannot go and express it anywhere. There's no institution in a sense that you could go and express your perspective, and it would be taken under consideration, because it's only men who decide about everything. And that affected me very much. And actually it comes together with communism as well, because in the propaganda we were of course talking a lot about, there was this slogan, women on tractors, and it was about that women need to be active, they are building communism. But in reality, women didn't have any position in society as well. On a making decisions positions. So it was the same message. Women should be silent. In a way, not in a direct way, but it was very, very, it was this message. It was projected at you, and actually it affected me a lot. That I had actually trouble with expressing myself. And
so, and did it help to sort of set you on a trajectory of discovering freedom and towards the masters eventually? Like, how did that past help to bring you, in the direction and to where you are now as a woman and as an aware being?
Oh yes, it affected me very much, because I knew from within that it's not right. I was still affected by that, but in some point I cornered myself so much that I had the sense there must be more. There must be more, and I was actually started looking for something else, and that was a quite long process, which took me to Ascended Master teachings. But also it took me quite a lot of time, because I had to overcome so many images and mental images I had about, for example, Jesus, about God, about and open myself actually to the possibility that there are some beings out there, some teachers, whatever you call them, ascended masters, and they actually can talk for somebody else to us. And so it was kind of journey to open myself to it.
Okay, and like about how long ago was it when you first came across the ascended masters, in the conscious sense through the teachings and so on?
It was 2011 actually when I found ascended master teachings, and it was first time when I actually got in contact with that. But my path of course, spiritual path started, long before that.
So did you have any, when you look back, like before you came to the teachings, do you have any recollection of like seeing that, you were connected with the masters, you just didn't know it? Or do you have any experience of being able to sort of see that, you were working with the masters, but maybe not with full earthly awareness?
I wasn't aware of that. Consciously, but when I look today, I was working with masters from actually very point in my life. Actually, when I think about it now, when I was a child, I had a very strong sense that there's something more, there is some presence. So actually, when I heard about this debate about there is no God, there is God, for me it was obvious. There is God. So, and the only way to actually explore it was to join Catholic Church, because there was no other alternative in my small town, and generally in Poland there was not much alternative at the time. So I actually decided, I was already baptized, but I wasn't in a religious family, but I decided that I'm gonna go join the church because I want to explore and know more about God and about Jesus. And I think that before that moment, I had some kind of connection with Jesus and with Mother Mary. But then when I got to the church, my attunement changed, because before I was more attuned inside, but when I got into church, I was more focused on the outer teaching, and and the message I was getting. And actually, I started looking Jesus outside. And I was also listening to this outer message or something. So actually, I lost this attunement. I lost this connection. So then I thought, okay, so there will be a first communion. There's some so-called sacrament in Catholic Church, and they say that then it's time when I get this first inner communion with Jesus. So I got through that, and I remember I was kneeling. I took this, they call it body of Christ, and then I felt nothing. Nothing happened. It was like no connection to anything whatsoever, just totally empty. And it was such a disappointment in me. And then I was like, and it took me actually a while to process that experience when I actually realized the church is empty. The church is empty. Because first I was thinking, okay, maybe something wrong with me. I was not open enough. But it took me a while, and I think that I was actually working with Jesus when I realized the church is empty, but Jesus is not in the church. But still, for many other reasons, I stayed in church for some time. But with time, I became more agnostic, in a sense that, like, I realized that Jesus is not in the church, but I wasn't sure how I can actually contact with him. Because I didn't have any spiritual teaching, nothing talking about it, but actually you can go within. Because, the funny thing in the Polish Catholic Church is that this sentence, but Jesus said, the kingdom of God is within you. It is translated into Polish as the kingdom of God is among you or between you. It means in community, in the church. It is translated that way. So even this sentence, which can actually trigger something in you and say, okay, so maybe Jesus is inside me. No sentence like that in a Polish, gospel or something.
Isn't that amazing?
It is. Actually, when I first time came across this, that it is kingdom of God is within me, it was like, it's obvious. It's obvious. So why it was translated, of course, now I know why it was translated into this, that kingdom of God is among us. And there's in a Polish theologians, this is how they are called, the people who talk about doctrines, they still discuss that. of course, they discuss. In original, it was within or it was among, and this endless, again, linear discussion about it.
Yeah.
Yeah, and actually, with this, when I was in this agnostic phase, when I felt, okay, there is something there, but I cannot connect with that, I cannot know what it is, I got a really, really bad depression, really, really bad depression. It was for several years until I hit I got into the corner and I said, I cannot live that way anymore. There must be something more. And then I started, like I call it, outer path period for myself. When I started looking into searching, there was internet at the time already. It was a big blessing. And I got through, probably many of us got through it, like UFO, crop circles, astrology, tarot, this kind, even Mayan calendar. It's not that I was very much into it, but I was studying that because I was looking for something else. And it must be more. There's more to life. I started questioning this world of view I got from church and communism, and then I also was studying the time at university. I was studying political science in international relations because I have chosen that because it was you could study a lot of things like philosophy, doctrine, sociology, economy, history, and many different disciplines. So I thought maybe I will find something there, but I didn't. So that's why I started actually looking for this other non-conventional stuff. But I remember, so I was that time in a PhD program, and I had to do some research. So I went abroad, and when I was actually in London, and then I didn't do any research because I had that time the greatest breakthrough. I think it was very, very important, one of the most important breakthroughs in my life, would turn completely my life around. So because I was there, and I have left everything in Poland. I mean, my family, my job, friends, my studies, everything. But I realized that I feel exactly the same. And then I got this idea, but wherever I go in the world, I can change the scenario around me, but I will always take myself with me, all my psychology, everything what I believe in, and that affects the way I look at life. And actually, it was a moment when I realized that it's all about my psychology. It's all about that. So it was this huge shift when I actually turned from the outer path into the inner path, when I realized that I need to start working on myself and look, now know yourself. So I had to actually go inside and start discovering what is there. And actually, I think it was because I was talking about with Polish programming, and actually we had a little bit with victim consciousness because of our history. We're invaded by Russia, by Germans, where we were occupied for 123 years, and there also was communism for over 50 years. So we have a little bit with victim consciousness and the sense that outer conditions can define us. So actually, in this very moment in London, I remember I was sitting in a park in Greenwich Park, and then it just dawned on me that I am not defined by the outer conditions, because if I was, I would feel totally different here in London, but I didn't. So it means that it's what is in me defines me, actually. So it's a huge thing.
Sounds like a good. Okay, so this sounds like a moment where now we're going into the psychology and looking within yourself to bring in one of the most global teachings that we have been studying, and that's about separate selves. And so could you just take a moment, like, just to briefly describe, like, what a separate self is to someone who hasn't ever come across these teachings?
Oh yeah, it's very many. I think there's many ways to actually describe a separate self from different angles. But I usually, when I talk with somebody who's not into the teaching, I usually use this metaphor of just program, like a computer program. But I just explain that it's like it's much more sophisticated program. and it's conscious program, but it's not self-aware. It's not self-aware. That's very important, but it's conscious in a way. That's why it has this basic sense of self-preservation of something. And we created I see it as for two reasons. One is to give us certain experience and to fulfill some certain need. And we endow it with some kind of identity. So but I'm saying that is actually kind of sophisticated program because we create it in our minds. We give it certain identity. We give it certain task to do. I would say in a moment what it could be. And then we are identified with that. We start looking at life through this identity we actually created. So we, for example, and actually I see that separate self generally is created to hide reality. So, because reality is that we are spiritual beings, we are in oneness with the whole universe, or everything is connected in a sense, and we can create many identities in oneness, but there are certain things we cannot experience. Like, for example, we cannot experience that we are sinners or that we are victims. So in order to create this kind of identity, we need to separate ourselves in our mind. That's why it's called a separate self, because we separate ourselves from the reality of who we really are. And we create a separate identity, for example, let's say, as a sinner who cannot actually, who is not responsible for itself because it was created that way, or it sins so much that it cannot make decisions for itself and needs outer power or outer institution, like let's say Catholic Church, to save it. And so it's kind of experience you cannot get in oneness, because when you are in oneness with reality, you know who you are. You know that you are co-creator, and it's your task to grow, and you take responsibility for your own path. A separate self,
and even with that identity of the sinner, like that is like it's sewn in by the church. It's actually sewn into the fabric of people's minds to believe something that it's not an innate belief, it's given. And the mind takes it on.
Yeah, and of course, with separate self, we can create it ourselves, but we can also take it. It's like, for example, if we join the church, we can take certain identity. We are Catholic, so it means that we are following the church, we are loyal to church, we believe in that we have sinned and we cannot redeem ourselves. We need not only Jesus, but also Catholic Church to redeem us. So there's all set of beliefs. And so this is one way where
you have automatic enemies also with these identities. Like, the Catholics the enemy will be, Islam or whatever it might be. And which is just ridiculous.
It's actually a very important point, because when you create separate identity, that identity is not in oneness with reality. So actually, in order to create it, you need to ignore certain aspects of reality. So, for example, you can, like, for example, you create identity of a Catholic. So when you believe that the church is the only way to salvation, so in order to actually to be completely immersed in this reality, in this, because now you create this new identity in a sense that Catholic Church is the only way to salvation, you're Catholic, you need to ignore the reality that there are many other religions. So what you need to say? You need to say, they are not true. They are not real paths. They don't take you to salvation. Or they are like Catholics, they like to say, they are partly true, but the whole truth is only in Catholic Church. So you need to ignore reality. And then what is happening? Because you ignore certain reality, but reality has this very interesting feature that it will knock into your door in some point. You cannot ignore it forever. In some point, it start knocking. When knock, 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 I am here. And suddenly you are living in a like Catholic country like Poland, but then suddenly refugees will start knocking who are Muslims, and they will knock, knock, knock and say, we are here, we need help. And only because they are Muslims and you feel threatened by them, you say, no, we cannot allow you in, or whatever. You start feeling threatened. But still, reality is knocking. There are other religions, and you can ignore it for a long time because you have very unified, for example, nation. 98% of people are Catholics, but then refugees who are Muslims are knocking and saying, oh, there is something else. There is something else. So what actually is happening there? And that's what I wanted to say before, that it's another example when you can create separate self to deal with reality you cannot handle. Because now you see the consequences of your choices, in a sense that suddenly, reality is knocking, or everything becomes overwhelming to you because you start seeing that, oh, maybe this identity I created is, of course, it's not totally conscious, but people go through it. It's not totally right, but it is threatening. It is threatening to you. So you have now suddenly you are, and this is what we call that this is Christ is actually knocking to you, presenting you with some opportunity to choose. Will you question your mental box you are in, like you created this mental box of being Catholic for yourself, or you will actually deny it, or you will reinforce it by creating another separate self, which tell you the story why you are right, by believing that Catholic Church is only way to salvation. And in that way, you create another separate self, which, for example, is saying you, oh, it's all attacks on the church. It was saying like pedophilia in Polish. You were asking about, Polish programming. So in Poland, we are going through now the situation that there is a lot of scandals of pedophilia. So some people are shocked and they have started questioning Catholic Church, but some people cannot do that. What they do, they go deeper into duality by creating another separate self, which will say, oh, this is attack at the church. These people want to destroy church because, or it is Satan in disguise, it's devil, it's demons working through these people because they want to destroy church, and they are not willing to actually look at the reality, what happened with church and how corrupt this institution became. So it was from the very beginning, actually. So
it's incredible, isn't it? It's just like literally the head just goes straight in the sand, and like, it doesn't exist. I don't look at it. It's absolutely bizarre and extreme. But as we know, through following this path of like seeing that and seeing these identities in ourselves, then we go through a process of letting the selves die. So how would you describe, what that is like, in actual real practical real life experience? What is it like to let a self die, a programming that you'd held on to? Can you give sort of a fairly sort of, relatable example?
So it's like of course, the basic element of the process of letting go of separate self is to noticing it. So it's first is self-observation. So it's like I am in a way constant state of constant self-observation, but it doesn't mean that I analyze myself. It's like I just look at my reactions. Whenever I interact with people or I am confronted with some situation, I just look at my reaction. And if I start seeing some pattern, then I...
Example of a reaction within yourself, like, how do you know you're reacting?
For example, I'll give an example from my personal life. For example, I have I'm close with somebody, and that person got irritated with me. Then it must be a close person. If it's some stranger or like not so close person, it doesn't matter. But if it is somebody close to me, if that person got irritated with me because I interrupt or something, say something, I feel very, very hurt. And
Me too.
And this hurt it's so deep, but I actually for a long time I couldn't even see. I thought it is a natural reaction to it. But in some point, I've been in teaching for some time. I started actually noticing that no, it's not actually the only reaction I can have. I could be actually neutral. Why should I react with sense of hurt? It's separate self which is hiding behind this reaction. So usually when I felt hurt, I would go into this hurt, but it was like I tried to avoid it in a sense because it's very unpleasant feeling. So I was like pushing it away or suppressing it, back into subconscious. I didn't want to deal with that. So what I have started to do, it was like you need to go into this pain. So you feel hurt. So instead, like dismiss it, you allow yourself to actually go into this pain and experience this pain. And what it gives you, it's actually you start distancing yourself from this pain. You suddenly start seeing, oh, this is actually the emotion or feeling which is in me, but it's not me. You are not overwhelmed, overtaken by it. There's a distance, a little bit of distance. And when I get to this point, then I usually ask Archangel Michael, and I say, okay, Archangel Michael, whenever I am in a situation that it would triggers that self, help me to get a split of second, because usually this reaction is totally automatic. We have created autopilot. The separate self works that way, that it reacts to the situation, which we created it to react to, and we are not aware of that, what we are doing. We're like slipping into that, not being aware of that. So I ask always Archangel Michael, give me a split of second of awareness that I'm doing that. And then I can actually make a choice if I'm going into this reaction or I can actually resist it. And in the beginning, I get it. I get the split of second, but in the beginning, usually it's too overwhelming. I feel such a pull into this self, in a sense that I need to react with this pain because it is unfair that they are irritated at me, that I need to go into this pain because I feel so hurt. And then it's my decision, almost like I decide to go into this. So there's still a little bit of distance, even if I later sink into this separate self, into this pain and, I'm such a poor girl, And then, but with time, I am able to resist it. I'm more more aware. In some point, I am actually, and I have this moment. Wait a moment. Why I actually need to react with pain? I don't need to. It's like I can choose something different. And then it's a moment when I start actually separating myself from that self. I always ask masters. I invoking light. I do invocations, degrees. I ask masters for help to see that self or transmute this energy, and which is behind this pain. And I am able to separate myself from it and see it. And suddenly I stop identifying myself with that self. And I see that it is just a self which wants to react to this particular situation in that way. And in some point, I actually can make a decision, but I don't want to react this way anymore. It's just not me. And it's also with most of the selves, where it's not only because some selves it's just emotion, but sometimes there's also more. There's of course this belief behind this emotion. We react this way because we believe in something. There's certain belief.
So what would you say the belief for this emotional reaction to irritation? Like what's the belief behind that emotional reaction, the hurt reaction?
For me, it was actually kind of a complex set of beliefs because I discovered that it was this: I am not that important for that person. If I was important, that person wouldn't actually react that way. So it was this belief, I am not important. And then I have discovered that under this I am not important, it was this this belief that I am not important because I have lost my creativity. I know it's like a little bit jump here, but I have discovered that when I came to Earth, when I experienced with how dense the matter here is, and I couldn't actually accomplish what I came here to do or manifest anything, what I was used to, I had this. I realized that something is different here, but I looked at instead, looking at okay, matter is different, it's much more dense. I was assuming, it's something wrong with me. I lost my creative abilities here, and it was so painful that I realized, so I am not important because I don't have creative powers. In a sense, that's like I'm useless, and it also connects. I'm talking about the self, which is actually part of my primal self and my birth trauma. So it's a little bit, much more complicated. But it was like I realized that I am useless, and if I am useless because I don't have my creative powers, I cannot accomplish what I came to accomplish here. So it means I am useless. So it means I am not important. And when people reacted a certain way to me, it triggered the sense that I am not important. It means I am useless, and it was very, very painful.
Yeah.
So sometimes it takes time actually to get to the bottom of that. And for me, it was connected with working on birth trauma, primal self, but also on the selves which brought me here to Earth. And then I got a little bit like a bigger picture of my reactions.
Yeah, because it's when the reality is, it's just, it's the parameters that you're working within when coming to Earth. It's just the way it is, but that self is created from reacting and taking it personally, like it's all your fault, like it was all directed at you somehow, and it's about taking away that personalization of it and realizing it's just the way it is. Like as Gautama Buddha says, it's just the way the cookie crumbles, and let it go. So you mentioned the primal self there. I'll just briefly say, so the primal self, we've got separate cells, and then we've got the primal self, and the primal self is the self that we created when we first came to the Earth. Now, if you don't understand that some of us came to the Earth, then this is going to sound really all cuckoo. But yeah, it's basically the very first time that someone incarnated on the Earth, and the primal self is created when we're exposed to a huge amount of trauma that we really weren't expecting, and it's from fallen beings who, do you want to say something about the fallen beings? Try and give a very, very brief sort of explanation of fallen beings, and then we can move into the primal self. Just describe the fallen beings for a moment, would you?
Oh,
I haven't got a description in my mind. There's nothing there.
I usually when I think about fallen beings, when I try to describe it in a more universal way, I'm just saying that these are beings who are living in a self-denial, and they are very, very deeply in duality, much more deeper than any, let's say avatars or like original inhabitants of Earth. These are beings who we have this concept that there are other spheres created before our sphere we live in, and they actually, but fallen beings, because they fall from the other sphere, they have chosen not to follow the development of their sphere. They just decide, because they denied the reality of oneness or something, and they decided to actually go deeper in duality. And when you are in oneness, you cannot experience duality anymore, so there was no room for duality and the sphere, so they decided to actually, now it was their decision, but they don't see it that way. They see that they were forced to actually leave their sphere and be incarnated in a new created sphere, for example, our sphere. But I see it generally as people or beings who are very much into self-denial. They are so deeply in self-denial that it's very, very difficult to reach them with any teaching or anything, because they won't Their birth trauma is so big, so huge, that they covered it so, tightly, that it's difficult to, and they do everything to actually avoid feeling this pain because it's so unbearable. So it's, and actually, yeah, I can say that my birth trauma was also connected to that, to this very, very deep self-denial some people have, or even existence of denial, in a sense that in duality, you have this tool which allows you to actually go deeper in duality, and when you are confronted with reality, that you can actually choose to go deeper through denial. You can deny everything. And it was part of my birth trauma, my primal self also. That it exists, that there are people who can go into denial.
So denial that people can descend so low, like what was your denial of?
No, it wasn't my denial. It was the existence of that people can actually choose, that that in duality you can choose to go into denial. And because I came here, but I realized that I've been working with the last 2 years, that I came here to actually help people get out of duality. And when you see that people can ignore you, or ignore the message of Christ or whatever, or even go in denial about reality, they can just choose it, then I could see that I cannot accomplish my task, because I cannot reach people who don't want it, because they can always choose ignore me, or ignore the message, or ignore reality and go into denial even. And it was very, very painful for me. And most of my life, I was reacting strongly to situations when people were in a denial.
So essentially, yeah, for me, it was very, very similar. It's just unable to accept that free will can be, like, from the perspective that my primal self would see, that free will could be abused in such a way where it can be used to harm another person in whatever way, like, through some sort of aggression, be it physical or emotional aggression, psychological aggression. It doesn't really matter. But yeah, for the same for me, I couldn't accept it, and it almost created like this part of you that couldn't accept it. But then what it created in me was this desperate self that tried really hard to break through to those ones who were so deeply in denial and abusing the free will. Like, I just would go out of my way to try and fix them. And, I just thought, my love, my light, that will get through and everything. But it's, I may as well just turn around and start banging my head against a brick wall. Like, that's, once you wake up to it, you realize, waste of energy. Like, all I need to do is just be myself, and, people will follow the light or they won't, like, whatever. It doesn't matter. But yeah. So, describe, that sense of liberation that that's come, like, since, what is the transcendence that comes from, liberating yourself of the primal self, and, how has that affected your life here and now to this present day?
Actually, for me, freeing myself from this primal self, and first going through birth trauma, because you need to re-experience that. It was actually a long process. It took me like 5 years to get through it. And there were like 3 stages. No, I don't know, 3 stages. It was more like 3 elements in it. First, it was this, it was sense of shock. I actually reconnected with sense of shock, because when we come here to Earth, we are in state of shock, because suddenly we see conditions on Earth, we see what duality is, and we couldn't actually know it from, this from natural planet. And so it was this very, very deep state of shock. And I literally, for 2 years, I think, around, I was in a state of shock actually, I started looking. I was always an aware person, even as a child. I was aware what's happening on Earth. I never denied, the reality of Earth. I knew about, I was actually kind of interested in all of this, like, Stalin, Hitler, Mao, Holocaust, and many, many other atrocities would happen on Earth. So I wasn't denying that, but still, I reconnected with a state of shock. I wasn't aware. I was like suppressing the primal self. Actually, what it liberated me from, because I see that primal self, like any other separate self, was hiding reality, and was hiding this reality for me that I was in a state of shock when I came to Earth. So in order to free myself from it, I had to re-experience that, and later it actually helped me be much more neutral about conditions on Earth, because I wasn't reacting to them through this primal self. Another element of working with my primal self, it was to actually re-experience pain, and it was enormous pain. It was so unbearable pain. That it was in first I could go only for a split of a second into that, because there was so much pain in it, and it was this feelings in it. The pain was about being powerless, and that of course this pain of birth trauma is directly connected to event I was involved, which was It's not that I have details, but I could re-experience that many people died because of me, in a sense that I made some mistake, or I was made believe that it was my mistake, which, made people suffer and die in a very violent way, and I could do nothing to save them, to help them. And I was also rejected because of that by many other people. So I had completely powerless, helpless, hopeless, and there was all this mixture of these emotions. And the strongest was sense of guilt and self-blame. And of course we are carrying that with us. It's still, we are not aware of that, because what primal self is doing, it is suppressing it. But actually, I was again very, very sensitive to certain situations in my life. I was very touchy with certain. If something triggered this kind of sense, feeling powerless or hopeless or something, this unbearable pain would come. So I would actually try to avoid this kind of situation as much as possible. So when I resolved that, it was gone. I'm not that touchy anymore. Still, I have other selves. So of course I react to other situations, blah, blah, but still. But I actually recall two situations in my life which are showing, and it actually can help people see that the birth trauma is sometimes knocking to us, in our life. In some situations, we don't even think about it. Like I remember I was 15 and I found this desiderata, this, it's like this text, and there's a sentence there that you are a child of universe, like trees and stars, something like that, and you have right to be here. And when I read this, you have right to be here, I started, it's not that I was crying, I was sobbing, weeping. It was like for 10 minutes, I was like uncontrollably, sobbing. It was this, and I was shocked again, because where is it coming from? What is it? Why I react to the sentence like you have right to be here? So I was really, really surprised by that. And then another was, it really connected me with this birth trauma feelings, like feeling powerless, self-blame, guilt, and it was when my cat was dying. I have a cat. I loved her very much, and she got lung cancer. And so I took her to vet one day, and the vet said, no, she's still okay. She has some other weeks to go. But I had very, very strong inner sense that I should put her down that evening. But because I was so attached to her, I didn't want to let her go. So I decided, okay, he says that she has more weeks to go. Oh, okay. I go with that. I suppressed my intuition. So I took her home, and at night, in the middle of night, was at such a crisis, and she died in a very brutal and violent way. It took several hours of very, very brutal dying, awful. And I felt completely powerless, paralyzed, hopeless, helpless, and I could do nothing about it. And the emotions which were coming, it was unbearable. And I loved the cat, but again, I was like, it was brutal, but still, the emotions were much, much more. It was, I knew that the situation is about something else, but I couldn't tell what it is until we got these teachings about the birth trauma. So it was this pain, those situations that I actually got connected with this birth trauma before, and I didn't know about it. And then the last element of dealing with my primal self, it was actually primal self itself, and feelings behind primal self, and feelings and the beliefs behind it. And feelings, it was mainly disappointment, disappointment and self-doubt. It was very, very strong in me. So disappointment, I discovered that I was disappointed with world, with conditions on earth, but also very much with myself, how I dealt with duality. I was disappointed with it completely. And it was very, very painful. And so it made me to self-doubt myself. I had strong intuition, but like with the example of cat, I would have tendency to doubt myself. Okay, I feel that I should, but he says that, it's okay. So I would suppress and there were many, many situations like that I would suppress my intuition. I would self-doubt. I would also, it's like, and when I resolved my primal self, when I let it die, it disappeared. I actually decided to also, get rid of this existential doubt I had, and it mainly disappeared with primal self. So, and also, it's funny thing, because for many, many years, I was waking up in the morning before I resolved my primal self, and I had this sense, disappointment. It was like, oh, I am alive again. Really, it was like, instead welcoming a new day with joy, always something new coming, it was like, oh God, I am alive again. It was this very short moment, split of second, God, I am alive again. I haven't died at night. But actually, so this is how I was. I had a sense of disappointment. So I thought that it was exactly this, that I was disappointed that I haven't died. But I realized later that actually I was connecting again with my primal self in this morning for a split of second, but I felt this disappointment with myself and life in general. And since I have resolved my birth trauma and I let go of my primal self, I don't have it anymore. It's gone.
Isn't it amazing how, that first thing in the morning, that's when we're coming back into our body, and in your body, like the first thing to say hello to you was your primal self, and that's the thought that came through. It's just reminding me, like, now when I wake up, I've just been noticing over the past few weeks, like, I just lie there and I'm totally empty, and I just listen to the sound of the breath, and I just find it the most beautiful sound, like the feeling and the sound of the breath just moving naturally in my body, that slow morning breath as you're just coming in there and ready to greet the world. Yeah. Wow. Well, we're going to have to wrap it up now, because it's just time to wrap it up. So thank you so much, Julita. Like, just fascinating, everything you've talked about. And I trust that anybody who's tuning into this, will find it just as fascinating. So thank you. And I guess we'll say goodbye for now. So
yeah. I just wanted to say one thing, because as we were talking about when I let primal self die, it was and about this feeling, what I feel about life now. Because before I had this feeling that I came to Earth to actually help people get out of duality, and that because of self-denial, or people can ignore me, I couldn't do that. And when I let go of this primal self, I actually realized that I'm not here to help people get out of duality. I'm here to help them, to give them alternative, to help them see that there is something else, that because what Christ is, and it's to be more. So when I let go of the primal self, I have a sense, okay, I can actually give people alternative, that there is by giving them something more, they can actually start realizing that there is such a thing like duality, because today, it's only Ascended Master teaching who's actually talking about duality, because even non-dual teachings, they are not giving the teachings about what duality is. So I just feel much more free today, and that's just what I wanted to say. That and thank you for invitation. Thank you for this opportunity to express my, to tell something about my path, and thank you very much.
Yeah, and it's lovely to see you in your freedom. Like, you can just see there's nothing that's blocking the flow of you. Like, you're just expressing yourself, and it's just lovely to look in the mirror on the screen here to see that being expressed, the freedom to express your Christhood and to express the reality of who you are.
Yeah, that's a beauty of our path.
Yeah. Okay. All right. Well, thank you so much, and bye-bye.
Goodbye.